Hey everybody, welcome back. So today we're going to be discussing this concept I've noticed recently about COVID vaccination passports. This idea that certain governments are considering that will prevent people from traveling, um, and possibly other things it might prevent people from doing who have not received a COVID vaccine. So the argument obviously is that it will prevent spreading the vaccine, but of course at the same time this will cause numerous restrictions to anyone who doesn't have the vaccine, which of course means there are certain ethical problems with anything like a COVID vaccine passport. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Both sides of this argument, the pros and the cons. So thank you for watching. Sit back and enjoy. Okay, so here we are at this article. I know it's CNBC. I know. I get it. But I've read this article and they are attempting to be objective about this whole thing. This writer, Sam Meredith, and just judging from the title of this article, you can tell he is trying to do the right thing and present both sides of the argument. Um, that's why I chose to use this one. So, COVID vaccine passports are being considered. Health experts and rights groups are deeply concerned, as they should be. I mean, just right off the bat, my argument against it would be, how far does this go? Okay, you're prevented from traveling, all right? You're prevented from going to certain countries. Now, we do that for certain viruses and certain diseases and things like that already. If you live in the US, you cannot go to China without getting a hepatitis vaccination. You have to get malaria pills. If you were to go to Africa or the Middle East, you have to get certain medications and certain vaccinations before you're allowed to go. I know this. I've been there. Um, so I completely understand it from one perspective. Okay, make sure people have a vaccination before they go to certain places. But here's where that argument is completely useless. For the simple fact that those particular viruses or diseases or whatever are not found in North America or in Europe in any major numbers, any significant numbers. When was the last time you heard about the Black Death in the United States? Well, outside of California, excuse me. Apparently, it does happen in California. So it happens when you bring in immigrants without being checked for health problems. They bring the Black Death over. Same thing with malaria, yellow fever, hepatitis. You don't want to bring those viruses across a continent where they don't exist. We don't have malaria and hepatitis in the US or in Europe. So it makes sense to give these people vaccines before they go. And there's the problem. COVID's already here. So what's the point? What would be the point of getting a vaccine for COVID before you're allowed to travel? Oh, you won't be able to bring COVID back to America. It's already there, moron. So it's futile. There's no point in attempting it. It's just a restriction on your freedom of movement, just to be quite honest. That's all it is. If that's your argument that, well, it prevents the spread. No, it doesn't. It's already spread. There's nothing you can do. You may as well prevent people from traveling if they don't have the flu vaccine every year. That would be your argument. Oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. You're probably going to start arguing for that one, right? Leftists? Shit, next thing you know, Joe Biden will be arguing for flu vaccines for anyone to travel outside the US. Good Lord. Just wait. Just wait. I won't be surprised. God, you heard it here first. So, your entire argument, if that is your argument is completely bunk. It's bogus. Okay? COVID is already here to stay. You can't get rid of it. Sorry. It's a virus. It's endemic. It's done. Live with it. So, let's go over this article. So, public health officials and civil liberty organizations are urging policymakers to resist calls for coronavirus vaccine passports at a time when many countries are in the process of reviewing whether to introduce digital passes. The US, UK, and European Union are among those considering whether to introduce a digital passport that will allow citizens to show they have been vaccinated against COVID-19. The certificate system would be used for traveling abroad as well as to grant access to venues such as restaurants and bars. Let that one sink in for a moment. If you don't have a vaccine, you can't go to a restaurant. You can't go to your bar, your favorite club, whatever. Why? So you won't spread it. You don't have the vaccine, you might get sick, you might spread it around. Okay, fine. If that's your argument, there it is. Plain and simple. I'll go along with it. We don't want people getting COVID and spreading it. So you won't be allowed to go to restaurants and bars. Well, that's step one. What about step 2, 3, 4, 5? If that's your argument, we're going to prevent you from going to these places where there will be crowds of people and you may be near large groups of people, and we don't want you to spread it. So what's next? Sporting events? Tens of thousands of people there. If you go to an American football game, good Lord, some of the college stadiums have over 100,000 seats. Baseball? Sure, lots of people there. 60, 70,000 people in the stands, I think, in a sold-out stadium. So there's that. There's cinemas. What if you want to go to a movie theater? A couple hundred people in one stadium, in one of the large seating areas? You get a couple hundred seats. Bam, restricted. You can't go. Theaters? Large theaters? Nope, can't go there. Grocery stores? What if you're in an area where the closest place to go shopping for food is your local Walmart Supercenter or Target Supercenter, and there's nowhere else for 20, 30 miles? You're not allowed to go there because there might be lots of people there congregating in one building. You might spread it. That's where the problem is. You give an inch, and I guarantee you someone's going to take at least 2 miles. And I promise you that's exactly what would happen. Or at least someone would push for it. You give them this, okay, we'll prevent people without vaccines from going to restaurants. Wait a few months. Promise you, it'll be movie theaters, cinemas, theaters, sporting events, concerts, and then it'll be grocery stores, large-scale grocery stores, like a Walmart Supercenter, big Targets, or these kinds of places. You won't be allowed to go anymore because there will be too many people. Just watch. Watch. You heard it here first. So let's go through this. It is thought a digital passport could help stimulate an economic recovery as countries prepare to relax public health measures over the coming weeks. The ailing airline industry hit particularly hard by the spread of the virus last year. No, time out. It was not hit hard by the spread of the virus. It was hit hard by the restrictions of travel. Is among those calling for governments to usher in legislation that supports COVID vaccine passports. So you have private companies telling the government what to do. Starting to sound more like an oligarchy, don't you think? Physicians and rights groups, however, are deeply concerned. Yes, they should be. Dr. Deepti Gurdasani, clinical epidemiologist at Queen Mary University of London, told CNBC via telephone that vaccine passports could inadvertently be used to provide false assurances to holidaymakers. Yeah, inadvertent. That's a polite way to put it. Quote, I can see that they might be useful in the longer term, but I have several concerns about them being considered at this point in time when I think the scientific evidence doesn't support them. And there are lots of ethical concerns about them that I think are legitimate, end quote. Yeah, ethical concerns like the restriction of movement. the restriction of travel. For those of you that need to brush up on your 20th century history, there was a place in Europe where they did this, where you weren't allowed to go to certain countries. You weren't allowed to buy things from certain countries. You weren't even allowed to sell things to certain countries. It was called the Soviet Union. Yeah. No, I'm not saying this is all socialism or anything, or communism. No, I'm just saying that things like this have been done before under authoritarian regimes. So, among those scientific concerns, Gurdasani said it is clear the protection coronavirus vaccine offers is very far from complete, and we know very little about the effectiveness of vaccines in preventing infection or even asymptomatic disease against several variants circulating in different countries. Yeah. So the vaccine is useless in certain regions, is what you're saying, Dr. Gurdasani? Yeah, basically. Because the vaccine we've got is for only one strain of COVID. And as we know, there are multiple strains across the planet. This is what viruses do. So, there you go. The vaccine you're going to get is good for what? The old school COVID-19 virus? Summer and fall of 2020? That strain is what you're getting vaccinated for. But it's already mutated. So, your vaccine might be completely useless against the new mutations. So, whoop-de-doo. Good job. In addition, most countries do not have sufficient access to vaccines in order to immunize their populations, and Gurdasani warned a certificate system akin to vaccine passports would discriminate against those populations even further. You don't say! Discrimination from the government. Certain people have the rights to do certain things. Other people, well, your rights are restricted. Where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, the Soviet Union. If you were a good communist, you got all the perks. If you were a bad communist, you got no perks. So let's talk about the vaccination plans in the US. So, former Vice President Joe Biden, on his first full day in the White House, outlined a 200-page national coronavirus pandemic strategy. The plan included a directive for multiple government agencies to, quote, assess the feasibility of linking COVID shots to international vaccination certificates and producing digital versions of them. There you go. It's happening in the US. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has also ordered a review of vaccine passports, while the European Council is due to meet on Thursday to discuss the next steps of the EU's vaccine rollout and movement across the 27-nation bloc. Love how they still use this BLOC spelling of bloc. Reminds me once again of 20th century. So, the International Air Travel Association, which represents some 290 airlines from around the world, has seen an increasing number of airlines sign up for its so-called IATA Travel Pass. The initiative is designed to help passengers manage their travel plans and provide airlines and governments with proof that they have been vaccinated or tested for COVID-19. In a letter seen by whatever, the IATA reportedly called on EU leaders meeting on Thursday to approve vaccine passports and come to an agreement on the crucial role of secure digital solutions such as the IATA Travel Pass. IATA was not immediately available to comment when contacted by CNBC on Thursday. The World Health Organization is not currently keen on vaccine passports. Well, thank God for small miracles. In a statement published on January 28th, WHO officials said governments should not introduce requirements of proof of vaccination or immunity for international travel as a condition of entry at present. Well, thank you. The United Nations Health Agency added, there are still critical unknowns regarding the efficacy of vaccination in reducing transmission and limited availability of vaccines. What happens to everyone else? A report published by the Economist Intelligence Unit last month projected that the bulk of the adult population of advanced economies would be vaccinated by the middle of next year. In other words, if we keep going by these rules of vaccinations, yeah, you're going to be on lockdown till 2022. Start protesting now. In contrast, this timeline extends to early 2023 for many middle-income countries and even as far out as 2024 for some low-income countries. It underscores the stark divide between high-income and low-income countries when it comes to vaccine access. These so-called passports claim they would ensure those who can prove they have coronavirus immunity can start to return to normal life, which raises the question, what happens to everyone else? Liberty, the UK's largest civil liberties organization, said in a press release earlier this month. And as far as that goes, if that's what we're worried about, immunity, those who can prove they have coronavirus immunity can start to return to normal life. Well, we were told for quite a while back in 2020 that if you had been infected, if you had coronavirus and you survived it, you had immunity for several months at least. I believe I read some articles earlier a couple months ago that said 3 to 6, maybe even up to 8 months of immunity to coronavirus. Well, I mean, if that's the case, then why not let all the people that already had coronavirus just get back to work? If that's all it takes, prove you had corona, get back to work, start to return to normal life. Oh, because it's not about returning to normal life. Never has been. So, countless suggestions for immunity passports have circulated. Some suggest their use would be limited to international travel. Others are less specific. Yeah, that should tell you everything you need to know. They're not being specific about it. Maybe travel to your local grocery store. Who knows? Meanwhile, a variety of technologies have been floated, from QR codes to apps or even physical cards, the statement concluded. One thing every suggestion has missed is that it's impossible to have immunity passports which do not result in human rights abuses. Absolutely right. One group of people get to do things and another group of people do not. Whether it's based upon their own choice to not get the vaccine or based upon economics, where they don't have enough money to acquire the vaccine, or based upon their nation's economics, where the country cannot afford to get enough of the vaccines, or they are not considered important enough to receive enough vaccines. I'm looking at you, Czech Republic, one of the lowest vaccinated nations in the European Union. Great job. Big Brother Watch, a UK-based rights and democracy group, has also warned against the use of vaccine passports, citing implications on privacy and free movement, among other issues. Yeah, let's just talk about those two for now. Jesus Christ. If you're okay with coronavirus vaccine passports, you're probably a bad person. I mean, I don't know. I don't know you personally. Just saying, you might be a terrible human being. You might be evil. You should really look in the mirror and do some self-reflection. So what happens next? In a report published on February 14th by the Science in Emergencies Tasking COVID-19 SETC group at the Royal Society, the UK's National Academy of Sciences, university professors outlined 12 issues that would need to be satisfied in order to deliver a vaccine passport. Well, let's hope they're not all satisfied. These included accommodating for the differences between vaccines in their effectiveness and changes in efficacy against emerging COVID variants. Be internationally standardized, be secure for personal data, meet legal standards, and meet ethical standards. So that right there just means legally it can't happen. You are not going to be able to do all of those things in that one paragraph. It will not. You cannot have internationally standardized and secure for personal data, because I guarantee you some company is going to sell it out, and it will not meet legal and ethical standards. Not those three things cannot exist at the same time. It's not going to happen. Nor will you have the efficacy against emerging COVID variants. One vaccine is not going to work against every single COVID variant. Sorry, that's a fact. Just go look up virology. Just go study it for a little bit. Oops. So, let's keep going. Understanding what a vaccine passport could be used for is a fundamental question. Is it literally a passport to allow international travel? Or could it be used domestically to allow holders greater freedoms? And now you need to invert that statement. Could it be used domestically to restrict freedoms? The answer is yes. It could be. I'm not saying it will be. I'm using the modal verb could. Think on that one. This is from Professor Melinda Mills, director of the Leverhulme Center for Demographic Science at the University of Oxford. We need a broader discussion about multiple aspects of a vaccine passport, from the science of immunity through to data privacy, technical challenges, and the ethics and legality of how it might be used, Mills said. Well, I can guarantee you this. If it's used by a government, it's probably not going to be very ethical. Just saying, bro. Now, thankfully, the people of the UK are smart enough and have access to this website called petition.parliament.uk. Here you have it. There's an official petition for those of you in the UK who might be watching this. You can go sign it. The petition is, do not roll out COVID-19 vaccine passports. We want the government to commit to not rolling out any e-vaccination status immunity passport to the British public. Such passports could be used to restrict the rights of people who have refused a COVID-19 vaccine, which would be unacceptable. And according to UK law, any petition that receives 100,000 signatures will be up for debate in Parliament. This one has already received over 217,000 signatures at the time of this recording. As you just saw, the numbers actually just ticked up a few seconds ago. So, therefore, the British government must have some kind of debate, or at least will consider this. Sorry, they don't have to, but they must consider it for debate. Well, once again, thank God for small miracles. So, any of you Americans out there that are living in the U.S., if you don't want these kinds of things, if you are worried about some kind of COVID-19 passport and what it may or may not do, what it may or may not restrict, you really should think about getting on whatever petition website we have in the U.S., and starting one, getting it going now before it becomes popular and before the government can implement any kind of vaccine passport to the American public. All right, so that's it for today's episode. Let me know what you think. Maybe you're for a COVID vaccine, or maybe you have a different perspective, different arguments from what I've outlined. Maybe you agree with me for different reasons about not having any kind of COVID vaccine passport. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, so that way you can keep up with any more content I create. I try to make a video once a day, 6 times a week maybe, if I'm feeling a bit lazy on the weekends. Also, you can find me on Gab, BitChute, YouTube. I'm on all 3 of these. I will also have an account on Odyssey, so you can follow me on multiple different websites. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I remain the Neo-Bohemian.